So this is what you're going to see when you first open up ZBrush. This is called the home page, and it has a lot of news or links to live streams and anything that they feel like they want to notify you of. They put it here. But you may not want this to show up every time you load ZBrush. So you can go to this little gear icon and then turn on Show if News Updated. Close that, and now it'll only open up whenever there's something new. So the next thing we're looking at here is the Lightbox, and the Lightbox has a lot of starting projects on this first panel. If you click through some of the menu items at the top, you'll see different assets, brushes, alphas, textures, and also something called fiber mesh for creating fur. It's important one though is going to be quick save. And quick save is where it's going to save or automatically save all of your files that you're working on in ZBrush. So the way that you close the Lightbox is comma on your keyboard, and same to show it, or you can press this button right here. You can also get that home page back if you want to click that button. But going back to the quick saves, these are going to be ZPR files, which are Z project files that are automatically saved every few minutes by ZBrush. Now, I usually recommend checking out your settings in ZBrush because sometimes your quick saves are set to a very high number, and you want to make sure that you're not saving hundreds of gigs of files to your computer. So the maximum duration is how many minutes ZBrush will wait until it saves automatically. I'm going to change mine to 10. Your rest duration is how many minutes ZBrush will sit idle before it automatically saves for you. Skip history. I usually turn this on because if you keep your undo history, your files get pretty gigantic after a while. And sometimes when they get too big, you can't open them anymore. The only time you really want to keep your undo history turned on is if you're trying to make a movie. Now, your maximum quick save files, it might actually be set to 1,000 right now, but that's a really high number. So if each file is maybe 1 to 10 gigs, this will end up eating up all of your hard drive space really quickly. So I'd stick with about 10 at minimum. And last, the delete quick saves button. I have a few right here. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And it'll get rid of them. And so whenever I click back to that section, it's empty now. Let's get out of the Lightbox. You may hear me refer to the document, and what I mean by that is this space right here inside of ZBrush. You might want to call it your viewport, but I say document because that's where the settings for it are. Right now, the working space is this gradient area, and we've got some space on the sides here that we might actually want to utilize, so let's go to document. And down here in the middle, there's a button called double. And you can make this any proportion you want, but this is just the quickest way to enlarge it. We'll click double, and you'll notice now that we don't have those gray bars on the side. Now, if you close ZBrush at this point and reopen it, those bars will come back. So what I want to do is click this button right here. Save as startup doc. Okay. And now whenever you relaunch ZBrush from now on, the document will be enlarged. So the ZBrush UI is actually pretty customizable. If you want to change the colors, there are a few presets that you can click through. Maybe find one that you like. You can further customize this, but these are just the presets. If you want to change the layout of the user interface, you can click through these buttons here. These will give you a few presets. And if you want to get back to what you had, just go to Preferences and Restore Standard UI. I tend to leave my colors the same and change my button colors. I do like to start out with one of their preset layouts. So this is the one I usually choose on a desktop. However, since I'm on a laptop right now, a lot of the buttons that I use pretty regularly are being hidden below the UI. Now I want to try and find a UI that'll work with the laptop. It'll show these buttons that I'm missing, but it'll still have some of the brush presets here at the bottom. So I'm just going to keep going through here. Now this is the button that I'm looking for. Solo is one that I use really regularly. So is Draw Polyframe, and it looks like that might be all of the buttons that I was missing. So I'm going to stick with this one. But I need to further customize it. So what I want to do is I want to go into Preferences, and I want to go back into Config, and there's a button called Enable Customize. I'm going to click that. And you'll notice whenever you click it, the UI will resize. And what that's doing is allowing some space for you to put buttons. So I'm going to enable customize, and that's turned on. And the way that you move buttons or you get rid of stuff is you hold down Control and Alt at the same time, click, and then drag them into the document space to get rid of them. Or you can click and drag them somewhere in your UI to place them. So it's Control, Alt, click and drag. And I'm just going to get rid of these buttons here. And probably this brush, because I usually only use about 6 brushes. But I also want to make it a little easier to customize my UI as I work. So what I'm going to do is take that Enable Customize button, and I'm going to put it in the UI here, so that way I don't have to go and find it in the menu later. So I'm going to hold down Control and Alt with the Preferences menu open, click and drag that button, and I'm going to place it right there. And just so I don't have to come back in here to save it, I'm going to do the same thing with this Store Config button. So now whenever I'm ready, I'm going to disable customization, and then I'm going to click Store Config. Hit OK. And the next time I open up ZBrush, this is what it's going to look like. There are a few other things that I want to add to this before I move on. I'm going to open up this divider here, and I'm going to close this one that's over here. And I'm just doing a double click or double tap with the pen. And you'll notice that there may be a menu here, and you can click this text area and it'll expand. If you don't want that there, just click and drag it into the document space and it'll disappear. So I wanted to add materials, and it's kind of hard to grab the materials from this menu, so I want to dock it over here. I'm just going to click and drag that little icon. Pop it over here in the side menu, and I'm going to choose probably the skin shade and maybe another one. I'm not a big fan of that matte cap red, but I do like to check it out in different materials. I'm a fan of that one, and let's see, I'm going to change that chrome to wet clay. So what I'm going to do is go back into Enable Customize, and I'm going to grab these icons here, Control Alt, click and drag, and I can put those materials right there in the UI. Now, you want to be careful, you don't want to use the one that's selected. So whenever you are ready to put the one that you have selected over here, so you want to select a different one so that it doesn't come with that selection. So if you were to click and drag and add that, you could see that it behaves a little differently. And once you turn off Enable Customize, it might be a little odd to work with. It doesn't actually select them, it just brings up the menu. So I'm going to get rid of that one. And I'm going to bring the wet clay over here. And actually, I'm just going to move these over put the skin shade kind of at the end. I'm going to leave a little space right here between these brushes and these materials. Now we haven't talked about either yet, so these might be just icons to you at this point, and that's fine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that divider. I'm going to turn off Enable Customize, and I'm noticing there are some UI buttons here that I'm probably not going to use, so let's get rid of those. So I'm going to hold down Control and Alt. I'm going to click that and drag it and drop it into the document. And I'm going to bring this divider back out because I use the tool menu from this area pretty often. I think it's set there by default. Uncheck Enable Customize. And then I'm going to store config so that my settings save, and then next time I open up ZBrush, it'll be like this. So one other thing I might change right now is the size of my buttons. Right now it's set to 48, and you go into Preferences to get to the interface section, and I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that to, let's do 30, and I'll turn off wide buttons. That way you can get more in the UI. So you can see now that these brushes are a lot more compact. So I'm going to move them a little closer to each other so that I can fit more in, and also I'll be able to utilize this empty space now. Okay, I'm going to save that. And I'm going to try changing the button size one more time. I'm probably going to have to start ZBrush over. Okay. All right, so let's restart ZBrush and see what it looks like. Okay, this is definitely a lot smaller. I've got so much more space, and I can actually fit all of the buttons and menu items in the UI now that I want. So let's actually enable Customize, and I'm going to move these over because I like to have them right here on the bottom right hand corner. And honestly, I'm kind of missing my wide buttons here, so let's actually bring them back. Interface. Let's see what all that changes. Okay, and now I can scoot these out. So as we go, I'll add more to my UI, but I usually don't know what I want until I start working. So this is a good point to stop and move on to the rest of ZBrush.